There we go. So let me do the song and dance at this point. So good afternoon, everyone. This is an open meeting of the Cannabis Advisory Committee, which is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2, the Acts of 2023. Since this meeting is convening by video, there's a few things that I'm going to remind you of at this point. Please raise your hand if you want to be acknowledged. Since the meeting is recorded, just be aware of what you say, do, or perform on the screen at this point. Basically, we'll call for a roll call vote every time we're going to wind up doing something in here. Above and beyond that, public is invited to join in with us at this point, which I'll acknowledge from time to time. And there's a lot more, but it's rather redundant. So I'm going to just kind of skip ahead at this point and start the meeting off and ask for a roll call vote just to confirm who's here at this point. So Joe Plandowski,
Here.
Jacques Zemicki. Need to unmute there, buddy. Since it is audio recorded.
Yep.
There we
Here.
go. And Abby?
Sorry.
No,
I am here.
I'm glad. And we have from the public, Dan Berger, who's a frequent guest of ours. So welcome, Dan. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's get started. You have an agenda before you at this point, and I would love a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
All right. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Abby. All those, unless there's any discussion, all those in favor, Jacques?
Aye.
Okay. Abby?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. There are no draft minutes. Dan, do you want anything under public comment, or you want to just kind of go with the flow here?
I'll go with the flow and see where it takes us. I just bounced you an email with basically all I've got for us this week, but just a couple updates from the last meeting. CCC laid out some timelines, but
Oh, yeah.
looking forward to a productive year. I've been busy, so making some phone calls for sure, but happy to be here.
Rand, no, thank you. And Dan has been good enough to share some of that stuff with me as well, too. So a few people out there are always keeping a watchful eye in the cannabis industry, and I appreciate them sharing stuff back afterwards. So election of officers, we'll get to that one of these fine days, unless you feel so inclined to want to move ahead with it. Since we actually do have a quorum. Otherwise, I just would love to be able to do this with a full board. That's all. So if you're good, we'll just table it and move along. Okay. All right. So Dan's right. There's definitely been a few things going on at this point with the Cannabis Control Commission. One thing that came up was on December 11th, Mass Municipal Association had a webinar regarding changes to the regulatory requirements for host communities. Did y'all get a chance to see that? Because I sent out the hyperlink for it. Yes, no, maybe.
I don't recall.
Huh? You don't recall?
I don't recall.
Okay.
I did see it. And I actually, interestingly enough, I get like regular Boston Business Journal updates. A bunch of the like cannabis control commission things for the state have been popping up through there. It's been good. I've been keeping an eye.
Yeah, your audio keeps kind of bouncing in and out a bit there.
All right, I'm gonna switch to my phone.
Sure. Maybe you just need to be closer to the mic, that's all. Or is that just a consistent?
It's always with Zoom. I don't know.
Oh. We'll pause for a minute here.
Barry, are
You
you
should be able to.
referencing? Go ahead.
Hold on for 1 second, Joe. I'm sorry. You get Abby or still?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Oh,
Yes.
much better.
Yeah. So I'm on my
Much-
phone, so I'm good now.
All right, perfect. Joe, go ahead.
You referenced the December document. Is that the one you sent out yesterday or today or a couple days ago?
I did.
The
it's in
host community agreement?
Well, no, there's a few things going on. The host community agreement is kind of part of what was going on. This was actually a webinar that was being hosted by Mass
Oh.
Municipal Association. Nicole Costanza from K&P Law was the one who was hosting it. She did a really good job to try to give an overview of where things were heading with the Cannabis Control Commission. It was probably just about an hour long, but with all the changes that are occurring, just to give you a quick synopsis, with all the changes that are occurring with the Cannabis Control Commission, the towns and communities that are playing host or considering playing host are everyone's just up in arms and kind of freaking out about the process because the changes are pretty onerous in relation to what the cities and towns were used to doing. Essentially, it boils back down to the pendulum kind of swung the other way. Whereas when the industry was first starting out and things were happening in Massachusetts, there was a high degree of favor played toward the towns and cities being able to kind of do almost whatever they wanted. After a few years of doing that and everything stabilizing, just as of recent, within the past year, the Cannabis Control Commission was like, we're going to do a rewrite on things. And so the pendulum truly, at least in my opinion, has swung the other way, where now the favor is squarely put into the arena of the various cannabis industries in Massachusetts. So, and part of it rightly so. There was a lot of fluff that was going on at times, and that needed to kind of be corralled in. But there's some of the other regulations are getting kind of onerous in terms of what the towns and cities are expected to do.
And I think
So-
also
I'm sorry?
the Massachusetts commission has had enough turmoil going on at that level,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
which
At-
I'm sure doesn't help.
Yeah. Abby, not to put you on the spot, but because we're doing the audio thing there for a minute, but did you have any takeaways from that? Thank you for watching it, by the way.
Yeah, no, kind of like I was thinking like there's just so much chaos going on at the state level, but I agree that I do feel like the pendulum is kind of swinging the other way, which is good because I think it helps people realize that, like, you know, very much the initial take is like too much, like too in one direction, and that we have to kind of do correction. So I think the good thing is at least there's like recognition of that, if you will, you know, that there's not like this super commitment to like going down a path that is unfeasible.
Mm-hmm. So
And I like comment I thought was interesting. I was saying, and I know my audio was cutting in and out. I get regular like business updates, and a bunch of the cannabis, the like control commission things come through because it's at a state level, and there's been a lot of stuff in the last couple months, you know, infighting and all that stuff, which again, it just kind of like takes away when you have, as you're well aware, Barry, sometimes when you're on a board that is complicated, that then it takes away from the time you could be committing to do, like really doing what you want to be there for. So
Mhm.
I get that. Anyway, that was it. Those are just my couple thoughts.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Jock, you didn't see it, did you?
Yeah, actually I did.
Oh, so do you have any comment?
No, not really. I was wait. I mean, I saw the one probably about 3 months ago, and I watched that one. Uh, some contradictory information, but it seems to the host agreement, at least that I'm looking at now, the preliminary or whatever it is that you sent us, looks pretty good.
Okay.
And
So,
I and I'm all for. I mean, that if the marijuana industry is going to survive, some parity in making it reasonably cost to market rates is needed, and
yeah,
so I'm all for the pendulum swinging the other way.
there you go. There you go. No, there were some things that were out there, not here, but in other towns and stuff where they were like, oh, community impact fee. Yeah, we have a peach festival every year. We'll gladly use part of the money that's coming in from the cannabis industry to host our peach festival. Um, which was like there's no direct tie there. And this is probably a good springboard to kind of talk a little bit about the host community agreement. And the entry point, because I know you don't see it on the agenda, but the entry point that I want to use for that is the update from the town manager. Um, Dan, I know you follow this stuff so closely, it's not even funny. God bless you. Just out of curiosity, and not to put you on the spot, did you have any walkaways from that MMA webinar? Did you get a chance? I'm sure you probably attended it, but
Fortunately, because I'm not a municipal official, I was not
oh,
able to sign up for this one. So they kept that
oh,
one behind closed doors. That's not for folks on the other side. But no, if I'm just from my impression of, and I've been doing outreach with a few municipalities who are represented by KMP, and I think half of the municipalities in the Commonwealth are. So odds are you're going to be dealing with them in one way or another, especially around this.
yeah,
But you know, and I can understand from the municipal side how these contracts take X amount of, hours, manpower, dollars to even put together. These are set in stone. And now revisiting that 5X, however many years, down the line might seem counterintuitive, but, the changes that have happened, I think, and the model host community agreement that they're rolling out, and actually the email I sent you just before this, there's a 2-week public comment right now on the draft model host community agreement. So folks have, ample time now to put in their input on what's out there now. And it looks like by March 1st, they'll have that, actual final draft out there. But, you know, yeah, it's an interesting situation, but I think, my biggest takeaway from all of this and sort of just, looking at everything, and I made this point last year, there's that 3% local tax. That's not going anywhere. And any municipalities that have been doing anything with that 3% community impact fee, they can earmark that 3% local tax and they'll get the same, line item out of it essentially. And I know that that's just, it's tough to lose anything in the budget on the local level. So it's a hard sell, but, really it's just going to help bring some more opportunity, honestly, in a different sector, the cannabis industry, where there are new licenses rolling out. There are different licenses that haven't rolled out in most municipalities. So I hope that once, the dust sort of settles, folks will see that, at the end of the day, it really is just going to hopefully help all parties involved. But yeah, it's never an easy sell to revisit a contract, regardless what industry it's in. So, but there you go. That's my 2 cents, if it's worth
thanks.
anything.
Yeah. So to kind of follow up a little bit with everything that's been going on, I wanted to arrange a meeting with Libby Gibson as the town manager. And she wanted to include in that meeting both Dawn Hill Holgate, who's the chair of the select board, as well as Leslie Woodson Snell from the director of planning. Anyways, the whole thing was boiling down to that with all the changes that are going on, potentially one of our applications coming due for a review and what the future is starting to broadcast. I wanted to make sure that since we are a subcommittee of the select board, that we were kind of all singing the same song and on the same page not only now, but as to where everything is heading. So I set up a meeting with her, and I want to just share kind of what my thoughts were and what I was kind of asking the select board to do. Bear with me for a second. Uh, we are here. Too many screens open. There we go. Because some of our conversations are extending into, the town, for instance, had asked us to look at the social equity policy. And then with the changes that were being imposed by the Cannabis Control Commission, that kind of gets stowed to the side. You've heard Dan talking about a few things that he'd like to do in the community. I've been raising that up as well too. But it was time, at least in my book, for our committee to get in sync with the select board in terms of what the future of the cannabis industry needs to look like on Nantucket. As well as with all the changes that were happening with the Cannabis Control Commission, to kind of get in alignment with that as well too, because what the Cannabis Control Commission is going to do is start changing the landscape of what we've already been doing with the two pre-existing industries out here. So it was time to have that meeting and at least discuss it on a higher level and see where it's going to take us. Let me do a screen share here. Page. Barry, you get too much stuff going on. All right, so here we go. And when I sent this to Libby, she was like, "Oh my God, really? Is that what's happening? That's way too much." And it's like, this is the reality of where we are today, what's going to be happening with the cannabis control industry and Cannabis Control Commission, I'm sorry, and where we see things happening with the industry within the next year or so. So I'll just give you a few moments to read through that list.
Can you make the print smaller?
Can I make the print smaller?
I'm kidding.
Oh, geez. Well, you're looking at my email that I sent out. Do you want me to read it?
Joe, you can zoom it though at the top. If you go to view options, you can go to zoom ratio. And
Oh,
you can
that's
zoom
right.
in if you want.
You'll just
Just
have
as
to.
an FYI.
Thanks, Abby. Just give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Thanks, Dan. Gotcha. Hey, Jacques. Abby, Joe, you good, or you want a few more moments? Abby, good. Joe?
That's fine. Are you going to send this to us after the meeting?
I could do that. Yes.
Okay.
But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about it first before I just sent it out. Um, certainly by no means was this meant to be the be all and end all or the absolute direction we were heading. But I tried to put something into place as to where things were heading, both in terms of real actual things that we needed to look at, as well as potential things that may be coming before us. And I think, like I said, talking with Libby and talking with Don, they were like, oh my God, we had no idea that it was really that complex. Um, I almost got the feeling it was like shorten the list, Barry, but I'm not gonna, that was not gonna happen in any way, shape, or form. Let's be real about things. So there's really a number of different things going on here that we'll need to start tackling. I've already talked to Leslie Whitson Snell about potential zoning changes. And so that was kind of productive. And these were the topics that we talked about. There was not too much there that really triggered any alarms with her. And then, as I said, both Libby and Dawn got a chance to chime in on, the Chapter 95 stuff that you see before us at this point. And I don't think they were aware of what wheels needed to turn if we're going to move ahead or what was going to happen. What complexes this whole issue is that with the Cannabis Control Commission, um, things are still, pieces of the board are still moving around. We're now finally starting to see some of the work product that they've been talking about, such as the host community agreement, what their thoughts, what some of their initial thoughts are on the community impact fees, the social equity policy. They're supposed to do something, around March or slightly thereafter. Let me just stop here for a minute because I feel like I'm charging ahead. Any questions so far?
I think the first item that's on the list is change from marijuana to cannabis. When I read through the host agreement, it's just loaded with the word marijuana. So they
So,
didn't get the message.
well, no. The host committee agreement from the Cannabis Advisory Committee?
Yes.
From the Cannabis Control Commission, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's tough keeping these things on the top of my head of which cannabis we're talking about here. You know, it's well, there's an open comment period that's here. That's funny, I didn't pick up on that, but I was reading it this morning with a fair amount of background noise. Yeah, isn't that funny they didn't change that over? I don't know why, but that should be changed. But um at a minimum, I thought it was important for this town at least to change over all of the references to cannabis. Marijuana has some social stigma associated with it. It's kind of a more antiquated term because it really is, it's not the Marijuana Advisory Committee, and it's definitely not the Marijuana Control Commission. It's the Cannabis Control Commission. Anyways, so in talking with Libby, and Dawn, their thoughts were that maybe as soon as things start to stabilize with the Cannabis Control Commission, with things like the host community agreement, the social equity thing, is when we should start moving ahead. So she was hoping to have a joint meeting with both boards, as well as with Leslie being there as well too, both the select board and the and us, to begin to hammer out some of these issues. But once things had kind of started to look like they were stabilized with the Cannabis Control Commission, I get a sense that at that meeting as well, she'll want to make sure that Nicole from KMP Law is also on as well to give us some information as well. And give us some advising on where to take things. So the thought is not, the thought was not to try to introduce anything this year into the town warrant to deal with anything related to the cannabis industry. But in ATM 25, this is where we need to move. And in order to do that, what we're kind of looking at for a schedule is to have a joint meeting with, like I said, with Leslie and KNP Law, so we can all get onto the same page and discuss these issues. Once we've ratcheted that down, the next thing we'd like to do is to do a series of public forums to roll these things out and get some feedback about what the public thinks before we even try to get into doing a town meeting. But the final endpoint of this would be to get this done roughly by about this same time next year. So it is a little bit of an aggressive workload, and there is that built-in delay because right now, with the town, everyone's just scrambling to try to get everything ready and prepared for this town meeting. And summer always poses its own little crazy things as well too. But that's where we're kind of heading. So joint meeting, public meeting at least 2 or 3 times, and then final prep for getting things ready as warrant articles for ATM 25. Questions on that so far?
Is there any time frame you're looking at in terms of at least by month? When would the joint meetings take place?
So the joint meeting we were talking about possibly May. I'm afraid that the deeper we get into June, the less likely it's going to happen. So it may be, and personally, I would really like to make it happen somewhere between May or June. And then maybe around September, host 1 or 2 public forums to roll it out and just get some feedback from the public. Those kind of things I think are always good and constructive. And it shows the public as well too. It's like we're being very transparent here. This is what we're all thinking. We would love to have your feedback. That'll probably be one more meeting again with those respective boards, select board, us. I may include the planning board at this point as well. I don't know. And then we'd move ahead into getting articles ready to be able to adopt, which that usually has like a mid-January deadline under which to do that before the select board adopts those warrant articles. And then there's the round of if there's anything with zoning, we need to show up at the planning board. If there's anything in the general stuff, all goes before the finance committee. And those meetings are usually taking place somewhere between January to March. So there we go. There's your timelines. Does that help? Or are there any questions on that?
It'd be great to have the joint meeting in May, just to get a sense of what other people are thinking.
Yep. Yep. Part of that is going to be what's also happening with the Cannabis Control Commission as well. They have said they're going to have things ratcheted down, hopefully by March. Whether that's the great moment of truth happening or not, but if they're still in high flux with a lot of these issues, that doesn't help us. We have to kind of wait on them because there's going to be what I would view as somewhat problematic is to kind of move ahead with all this stuff, and then all of a sudden the Cannabis Control Commission issues new edicts that are like, oh, we have to totally rethink what we just did. So, if any of you are hearing anything out there, and I know Nicole Costanza will keep us kind of in that loop as well too. we can start thinking about May, about having a joint meeting, and I'll keep pressing on that a little bit as well too. So the social equity policy that we moved on, that we talked about at this point is going to get moved out because that still is a work in progress with the Cannabis Control Commission. You've got the host community agreement template before you. That just came out just a short time ago. There is a public review process where they'll take comments through January 31st. So I know this is kind of short notice. And here's what I'm going to do is I can give you one of two options. We can either discuss it today and close this and see if there's anything we want to shoot back to them. Or two, we could have one more meeting a week from now just to deal strictly on this issue with a formalized letter. So I'm going to turn it over to you all. Let me start with Abby, and then I'm going to work my way through here and just see what your thoughts are. Please.
On where do you want me to start?
Well, the thing is, all right, we'll start from the top and work our way down. Hopefully, have you all had a chance to read the host community agreement that was proposed by the Cannabis Control Commission? I'm sorry, I know it's short notice.
I
Yes.
I
have,
was trying to on my work computer and I was getting blocked with my firewall.
Oh,
Of course.
see.
Hold on, but I should be able to open it on my phone.
I have read it. It's not difficult reading.
Yeah, fortunately it isn't. All right, so Abby, while you're trying to open that up, let me go. Jacques, let me talk to you for a few minutes. Do you feel like we need to comment on this? And if so, specifically, where would you see that we would need to make comment to the
You
cannabis?
know, I read through it and I didn't really see anything that uh, that I thought really needed to be addressed as far
Okay.
as it seems to be a pretty nice document.
Okay,
Uh, Obviously, the public hearings might change some of it,
right.
but I don't really see anything in here that raised any red flags for me.
Joe, let me turn over to you.
Yeah, I read this thing. There was, I mean, some cleanup. For example, I don't know if you have it in front of you, but
I do.
section
I've got the printed version right in front of me.
section 5.A.6 and 7. That's just a duplication. It says in one case, no impact fees shall be assessed after the 8th year. And then the other one says, after 9 years, you can't collect it. Well, we already know that from number 6 and 7, but that's neither here nor there. I think when you get over
Oh.
to,
All right, let
Go ahead.
me stop there for a second, if you don't mind.
yeah,
All right, so 5 is saying that you can't front load a community impact fee on the applicant until the final license is granted, and that
no,
was.
we're reading a different 5. I'm
looking at
reading, yeah,
annual-
I know, I'm reading 5.A6 and 7.
Oh, 6 and 7. I thought you said 5, 6. All right, so hold on.
We'll get 6 and
I
7.
So I think Barry is saying though that this says something slightly different because you're talking about in point 6, you're talking about the 8th year of the company's operations.
Yeah,
But then the second number 7 is saying that the company has held the license for 9 years. So the company could be theoretically 20 years old. It might be, Joe, I hear what you're saying, where in reality that it might be the same thing, but I think they're trying to slightly distinguish between like a nascent very young company or
Yeah.
a company that had a lot of experience in the actually holding of the license. So I think it's slightly different. That's how I interpret it. And
That's
obviously
fine.
everyone, I was able to get the document open and read it along.
God, you're fast. That's
So
pretty
that
good.
was,
No,
yeah, that was, well, once Jacques said that, it is very similar to a lot of agreements that I see for work. Obviously not, marijuana is still banned in the banking industry because we have federal licenses. But I did agree though, Joe, what you brought up earlier, how the document has marijuana everywhere and doesn't say cannabis. And that might be something, if we do public comment, to just ask, like, is that intentional? Do we intend to keep the marijuana wording versus cannabis? Is there a choice? Because I agree with you. I think that's the only thing that's a little like misnomer of, okay, I mean, and if they want to say, no, we want to keep marijuana everywhere as it is, fine. But
Just
I
be
agree that,
consistent. Just be consistent,
exactly.
that's all.
so
And
that would be my only thought.
the other area was 8 point A, B, and C.
okay.
I
Oh,
mean,
just real quickly, I just want to concur with Abby. The difference between those two, she's right, is that if you already have a business that's established, the first one that you identified says that's it. There's a cap on that no matter how you deal with it. And the second thought was that if it's a new business starting up, it was to identify that there is a timeline again associated with it. So I think there was that little bit of deliberate to want to do that, to say it's an old business. The rules that you were used to operating under are thrown out, and this is now the new set of rules to deal with.
yeah,
Okay. So I'm sorry, section 8, equity and local opportunities, A, B, and C.
yeah. I mean, this whole business of, look, this is an island. We're supposed to hire residents from the municipality. Well, maybe you can't. I mean, think of Marine Home. They fly employees over from Hyannis every day and fly them back on their private plane. Does it matter? I mean, I don't care what they do with that, but does it really matter who the cannabis company hires? Does anybody care as long as the people are qualified? And then they put all this nonsense in here and I read it and just say, that's too bad we cut down that extra tree in the forest to print this paper.
I have an answer for you for that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I know. There we go.
I've
And I
heard
think
those before.
I don't know about Jacques, but I'm sure Abby is familiar with it as well too. But in terms of dealing with municipal government, there is a big thing called social justice.
Yeah,
And
yes, I
under
know.
social justice is where you get all of the social equity issues emerging. So that was, believe me, when that first came up with the Planning and Economic Development Commission on the better part of 15 years ago, I was like, what in the name of God is this? But it is now within the government sphere. This is now a very real thing. With
The
social
problem,
justice.
the problem you have in Nantucket is it's a small geographic area. It has a bunch of small businesses, and those small business owners ought to be hiring the most competent people they can find. This isn't
Well,
Bank of America.
That's okay.
So
So
there is,
go ahead.
I will tell you, working at a company where we do is the key phrase in this, especially in A, is make good faith. So to your point, we can make good faith. We can include whoever in the hiring process. You still can hire the most qualified person as long as you can say you made good faith. And I think in a community like Nantucket, our good faith is, you know, if we have, like, if Dan happens to be the one proposing a business, sorry, Dan, you're a white guy. But at the same time, if Dan's the one proposing the business, we're not going to say, no, we can't we can't do Dan's business. Like you have to make a good faith of say, hey, we advertise that like we're gonna have, I'm making this up, like one more license. But if Dan's the only one who applies, you're covered because you can say we opened it to everybody. Dan was the only one who applied. You're good. So I think that that's the thing. That's the key with DEI concepts is as long as you make it inclusive to everybody. But you have to understand in communities like it's the same thing we run into with jobs. Like I'm still going to hire the best consultant to do what I'm doing because it's very specific. I can say I put it out to everybody, but you hire the best person. So I think you'll be okay there. But I think also with the administration in place on a state level, I don't think you would get away with taking that out, just so you know.
I think it's called DIE.
It's DEI, diversity,
I
equity, inclusion.
understand.
Yeah, no. Well, but I think is like I said, I think you say as long as like, hey, we put it out to everybody, whoever puts the business. It is what it is. You know, that's just my 2 cents. And having dealt with it on a professional level, you'll be fine, or we'll be fine, and you'll be fine too, Dan. Like it's not like we're not going to go with Dan. If Dan's the guy. We say, you know, Dan's the only one who's been coming to our meetings. Like Dan is the most qualified person, and you're covered because you can say Barry advertises the meeting to everybody. It is what it is. Whoever comes, comes. But you know, the key is that you've given people an opportunity. If they don't engage, it's on them. It's not on you.
Right. And the other thing too is that if you do make a decision which may seem contrary to this, and all of a sudden you've got one of these communities coming up saying, "What the hell happened to us?" You've got to be able to prepare yourself to be able to defend that position.
Yep.
Because it's not just going to go sliding by if there's a complaint filed that you did not include the concept of being able to allow other communities to at least participate in the process. One thing that I was working on that I came across, which was really kind of neat, I think it was the city of Somerville, used scoring criteria when they were looking at someone who was making application before them. So if you were part of someone who fell into that social equity realm, that social justice realm, they were given additional points. But it wasn't that all of a sudden it just was like everything else doesn't count. It's just they scored higher because they were considered part of a social justice. I'm not sure what word I'm looking for here, but that was one of the things that was happening with it. It's, this has been out here for a while, and what I'm seeing is that, especially in the government world, it is cropping more and more and more into everything that is being considered when the government does this thing. That's why we hired a DEI officer. Diversity, that was something that was not even thought about.
I know, but if
So-
you're in tune with the latest business news, there are a lot of DEI folks that are on the street looking for a job now because the pendulum is swinging. People have said enough nonsense.
Well, and we could go round and round about it.
I understand, and
We
I've
really
run
could.
large and small companies, and I know what it's all about.
Yeah,
That's why we have a human resources department, and they take care of those issues.
yeah. But like I said, it's not going away soon because I'm realizing that with other documents that other town departments are dealing with, this whole idea of social justice is becoming a lot more prevalent in terms of how they have to construct their document to do something. And the second thing is that if you don't put it in there, they're actually losing points in a scoring process when they're competing with other cities and towns. So, like I said, that's why it's here.
Oh, I'm sure.
And you
I'm
know,
sure it's-
no matter whether it's Nantucket or Boston, again, the Cannabis Control Commission is not, they're looking at the entire 351 cities and towns, communities
Yes.
out there. So when it comes to Nantucket, we, if we're gonna deal with this, you'll have to make certain justifications for it. And I think that's kind of where that really boils down to, that, you know, because we are geographically isolated, that it does kind of change things a little bit. But again, you know, I look at this, we definitely have a Black community out here. We've got a Hispanic community out here. We have veterans out here. We got people with disabilities. We have got people from the LGBTQ plus community. So
Plus you have old people like me.
yeah, well, isn't that interesting? It doesn't say anything about
Uh,
seniors.
yeah.
So
Seniors, the hell with them.
so you'll garner no points there. I'm sorry, sir. But you could make a, you could, I'm sure that somewhere,
They gotta say,
I'm
you gotta
sure,
have old people gotta get in that line. Come on.
where it doesn't put it in black and white, but I bet you if you talk to our DEI person, they'd probably say we do
Of
have to
course, you're in.
as well.
And you could be right behind me.
Absolutely. So part of me for exercising maybe a little bit of latitude here, but you know, that this is the main reason why it's here. Does that help?
It helps me. I know why it's in there when I read it.
Oh, there you go. So you just wanted to stir the pot.
Stir the pot a little. I see Dan laughing. Must be funny.
See, Dan, you wondered where all those gray hairs came from, huh? Anyways, was there, all right, so let's keep going. Was there anything else in here?
No, I didn't have anything else in there. I just thought it was very wordy, a lot more wordier than I would have expected in the document, but a lot of words. 7 pages long. Does it really need to be 7 pages long? Get out the axe and chop it down to the essence.
Well,
But I'm not doing that. I mean, I
yeah,
could do that, but I'm not wasting my time on that because this
yeah.
is handled by people with a different mentality.
Yeah, and truthfully, so I mean, really, the only thing that has come up out of our conversation was, you know, it's questionable as to why they didn't use cannabis in here as opposed to marijuana.
Yes. Yeah.
And truthfully, I'm not sure I would want to send them a letter on just that one note.
Although
I think
it would be important if it was consistent, if they used one term throughout.
I agree, but I think what may be driving that right now is they've got so much before them at this point, and a lot of this would be also with them having to almost have to do a complete rewrite of Chapter 95 that's out there now. So I don't think they're up for that task yet. You know, if it were me, I'd say, well, you could handle that as a technical amendment. But I'm sure a lot of the original documentation that stems from day one when they did this has the word marijuana just running through documents all over the place, not just on the state level, but on local municipality as well. Um, I think I'm not sure if I was sitting on the Cannabis Control Commission, I'd look at that and say I just want to tackle that in one fell swoop. I'd rather deal with the hardcore stuff that, you know, deals with the actual industry and the people for that industry, and then deal with the other stuff afterwards once I've got that ratcheted down.
Well,
It's more of a verbiage type thing, that you know, I would push it off, and then in the end, when everything looks pretty good, I'd say now we're going to change it over. You know,
now, don't we have one of these expiring that needs to be renewed? Isn't that close?
I got very mixed messages on the implementation date, um, from both town administration and town council on that. And I know they're working with the vendor right now that's associated with. I think that they, in light of what the Cannabis Control Commission is now trying to do, they may just extend it for another few months and then use this document and what's in there to try to figure out what the next stage is.
So you think
'Cause
this might be the first part of next year for the renewal?
I think so. I really do. The town does have the right, as long as the applicant is good with it as well, to be able to extend it out without making any significant changes to it. So if both parties are in agreement, I to me, if I were sitting in the town administration seat, I think that would be my advice to my select board as well. Is just let's throttle back for a bit. What's going on with the Cannabis Control Commission is causing, a little bit of consternation with things. And if we do anything now, we may have to change it again. So I think waiting a few more months, but I think it will come up eventually. But I think that's where things are at. If I have to read into the situation, that's how I would read into the situation at the moment.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So I mean, if you really want to, I'll draft a letter to
No,
have.
no, no, no,
Okay,
no, no.
thank you.
no.
I'd prefer not to.
I can tell.
I don't think we're going to be the only community commenting on it, but I think they're going to probably want to deal with that in stages. I don't think it's lost on them. I just think that we understand cannabis, we understand marijuana. The terms technically, at least legally right now, are interchangeable for all intent purposes, and without having to do a massive rewrite of everything that's out there just to change that one word. They'll stick with it until they feel like they've got everything ratcheted down. And I think there'll come a point where they will wind up changing it. That's my analysis. I could be wrong.
We'll be in a retirement home by then, right, Barry?
Could be but we can still zoom in.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, and harass whoever's
Yeah.
running it.
Right. So that's kind of the long version of what was going on with the town manager. There was a lot of depth to that. As you can see, there's a lot of points of consideration. And like I said, there are things within our span of control that we can do. And then there are things outside of our span of control, which are going to be what happens with the Cannabis Control Commission. So we'll get there. The timelines are all starting to collapse together. But I think within the next few months, we're going to be in good shape to be able to move ahead here.
It's like the zoning issue you raised, where you can't have two dispensaries within 1,500 feet of each other.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like an automobile dealership. You have a Ford next to a Chevy next to a Honda. Who cares? I mean, you
Well-
think of that and you say, so what if all four of them on Nantucket were in one block? You're going to go to your favorite place anyway.
I would firmly agree with you, but remember that the initial concept here was drafted when it was the Wild West of cannabis.
Yes.
And there was a lot of fear, either real or imposed, about what was going to happen. It reminds me of the musical, The Music Man, when they're talking about the pool table coming in.
Yeah.
Now, there's trouble in River City.
Yeah.
So a lot of that was done, I think, without people understanding of what the future was going to be. But here we are several years later, I think the better part of 5 now, where we see that, the cannabis industry, I think, is generally pretty well accepted.
Well, the forum would certainly help.
That's, and if I may, that really is an important thing because I think left to our own devices, we could certainly go charging ahead, but I worry the fact that it still has to be the select board approving certain things, and I don't want the misstep to happen between the two of us. And sadly, I've watched that with other committees. And all that does, it just alienates the select board against the committee, and that's not a healthy place to be. And these are pretty big changes, for the cannabis industry as well, too, here on the island. So, like you said, it's not going away.
No.
And so I think we need to kind of get our heads wrapped around certain things. I will send out that punch list of what I had sent to town administration
Good.
to you after this meeting, so you can see it. But there we go. So I'm actually kind of excited personally. Allow me to digress for 1 minute or two. I'm kind of actually excited because we were sitting on the sidelines for a while, trying to figure out what to do. Now we've got the town engaged in the process and they want us to do the work with them. So that's taken a long while to get there. And I'm just kind of, as one person, I'm kind of excited that, they're realizing we really do need to they put us in place and now they need to use us the right way to be able to make it happen.
Yeah.
Yep. And if I'm wrong, well, I'll get to see you all at the Stop and Shop at this point, as they disband the Cannabis Advisory Committee.
I don't think that'll happen with Dawn being on the committee. She's
I
beginning to
know.
understand what's going on.
I'm teasing. I'm
Yeah.
teasing a little bit, but thank you. Do you have any questions on that? That's a lot to kind of digest. Considering how we've been operating for the past. But we are going to start moving ahead, I think, and I'm confident with that. So any questions or things that you want to discuss in that arena? No. All right, good. All right, that agenda will start filling up as we start moving ahead at this point. We are technically scheduled for February 15th. So unless there's any other business that needs to come before us. Nope, we all good. Then I would love a motion to adjourn from one of you. Sir, you're making that motion, Joe?
I am.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
I'll-
and Abby's going to second it. Thank you. I hate to tell you, I need verbal confirmation with things at times when we're doing this, as opposed to I can see you, you can see me, but certain people may only listen to the audio transcript of this. And when they're listening, they have no clue about who's making the motion, or the fact that the motion was even made and acknowledged. So I do have to kind of
Joe is making a motion that we
thank you,
adjourn.
duly noted, and Abby has conveniently
I-
seconded the motion at this point. Thank you. Abby? To
Aye.
adjourn. Joe?
Aye.
Jacques?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. All right. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it.
Good talking to you.
All right. Good talking to you all.
thanks.
Stay healthy out there in the meantime.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.